Hello, friends. It's great to be back with you. We're in our 19th podcast today, and today we begin the book of Psalms, which, if you learned kind of as I did, we're almost halfway through the Bible. and in a sense, because a lot of times you say you'd open up the Bible and you could open up in the middle and you'd be in Psalms. So maybe that's a congratulations that you have stuck with us for this long, that we're getting there. Even technically by the year, we're not there yet, but we're getting close. So we're glad that you're still here with us and continuing this and just and continuing to learn as we continue to share. And today, in this first part of Psalms, we wanted to take a moment to talk about Psalms together, like how people read them. You know, how different parts of them, we have several different parts of Psalms. Some you see Psalms of Thanksgiving, some you see Psalms of Lament. Some talk about just God's power and his creation and different things like that. So we wanted to kind of talk about those areas in this first podcast, so that if you aren't familiar with what we have, that you can see and learn and be able to realize that Psalms actually can be a book of prayer. That many people pray Psalms, and you can hear them in different aspects as we go through of how things go.
Yeah, I think that it's important to understand the Psalms more in terms of the voice they give to us than what they say to us. Athanasius famously said, all of Scripture speaks to us, and the Psalms speak for us. That sense of the Psalms being giving voice to our experience, I think, is an important part of understanding how we read the Psalms, why we read the Psalms, and what we do with them as we read them.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the studies and authors that Tom and I have both used. We had two different books by the same author, by Walter Brueggemann. One is his talking about praying the Psalms, and mine is on the spirituality of the Psalms. But a lot of it had the same information, and some of them talked about. He broke down Psalms into categories of Psalms of orientation, Psalms of disorientation, Psalms of new or reorientation, however you wanted to learn it. And in the aspect of this first grouping of songs, Psalm 1, it can begin as like, in these songs of orientation, it was really about songs of creation or songs of God presiding, so to speak, of God being there. And Psalm 1 really talks a little bit about that and about God and those who are happy who follow God's law and God's instruction, and how that those who recite his instruction, those are the ones who are like a tree who like plant by streams of water, who bear fruit at just the right time, and those who don't, says it's just the opposite. That it's the opposite for a tree, like your dust and your wind that goes through, just the different areas of things where, but you see the beauty, for one, of God's creation. You also see the rule. I don't want to say God's ruling, but God presiding, so to speak, over it, and really the faithfulness and grace of God that you see in a lot of these Psalms of orientation. In our first section, like in your first sections, I think it goes through 36, I believe. There's a few in there, that talk about that. Psalm 1, Psalm 15, Psalm 19, Psalm 24. All those, if you go through and look over them, you see this sign of talking about God's creation or God presiding things.
And of course, iconically, Psalm 23.
Yes.
Speaks to that
really
notion. This idea of secure orientation, I think, gives voice both to those times when we feel like everything is good and right, and also gives voice to our desire for that. We want what Kate Bowler describes as a Newtonian moral universe, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We want the universe to be ordered, in the way that Psalm 1 is. We want everybody that follows the counsel of the Lord to be happy. We want, we want instantly for anybody that disobeys the commands of God to be turned into dust and blown away. That's what we want.
Yeah.
It makes the universe feel orderly and right. And there are occasions where we feel that and we know that. As Brueggemann points out, they're rare.
Yeah, absolutely.
The much more common experience that we have is the disorientation.
Yes.
The painful disorientation. And I think that one of the beauties of the Psalms is to live those moments of disorientation within the context of our faith. The psalmist never stops praying, even in the dark times. I frequently call groups back to one of my favorite phrasings from Brueggemann's idea is this notion that for the Psalms to make any sense, we have to let them touch the raw edges of life, those places of pain that we generally don't want to show.
Yeah.
We don't want to show them to one another. And somehow or other, we believe that we shouldn't show them to God. Brueggemann says, for the normal, conventional functioning of public life, the raw edges of disorientation and reorientation must be denied or suppressed for purposes of public equilibrium. What he means by that is this notion that we pretend that everything is good. You can think of the times that someone says to you, "How are you doing?" and you say, "Great," all the while breaking your heart, breaking inside, because society needs us to be like that. We need it to be securely oriented. Brueggemann goes on to say, in that, when we deny those raw edges, the Holy One is not addressed, not because we dare not, but because God seems far away and hardly seems important.
Very true. Yeah, a lot of that is true. And like I said, I think a lot of times, especially, and I know I do it a lot, when you are going through a tough time, Psalms is usually one of the places where I turn to read. Not necessarily, which is odd, but because you have as many songs of Thanksgiving in here as you do, but usually if there's something going on, it's like, it just feels like these Psalms, like they can be relatable to what you're going through in some ways. And, as I was thinking in going through this, I couldn't help but, think, I know we just, that we're getting, like you heard about Job last week and going through and just some of these, like, especially in Psalm 31, it's almost like he's crying out to God in the sense, and this is what this says. He just like, have mercy on me, Lord, because I'm depressed. My vision fails because of my grief, as does my spirit and body. My life is consumed with sadness. My years are consumed with groaning. Strength fails me because of my suffering. My bones dry up. I'm a joke to all my enemies, still worse to my neighbors. I scare my friends, and whoever sees me in the street runs away. And if you remember, when the times the friends first came to see him, like they didn't even go right away. Like they stayed back because they didn't recognize who he was. And I just kept thinking about this. And he says, I am like a piece of pottery destroyed. And you remember him taking the piece of the thing to scrape off the whatever he has, the sores that he had. And it was like just so many things that I think I was just relating when I was doing these in these Psalms, that was just one that really stuck out to me in reading, because I was kept hearing what he was saying or what he was experiencing, as we were discussing that last week. And that one really just was one that just like, wow, I could see that that toe crowd. And a lot of these, like, you see some of these in the moments when David is about, some of these are written by David. You can see in some of the sense he's crying out when in a lot of these that we see in this time to save him, or or he's sinned and he's seeking that forgiveness to try to get it's a new life. And so there's just lots of things I think that we can think about, not only in our own lives, but even seeing those in the scriptures that we've read, this crying out when things are there. And even going through, like, personally, how many times have we cried out, have mercy on me, or whatever the situation,
how long
yes,
how long must I suffer? How long will you turn away?
Yes.
Answer me when I call. All of those are phrases that repeat through the Psalms. And, I think coming as we are on the sort of heels of Holy Week, in these initial grouping of Psalms as we have them, it's hard not to read Psalm 22 and hear the echoes. Psalm 22 begins, my God, why have you abandoned me? Why are you so far from delivering me and from my anguished roaring? Clearly, those are the words that Jesus spoke from the cross. In some sense, it was invoking, by that single phrase, he invoked the whole psalm for the audience, and drew them to this place in the scriptures. It gave voice to what he clearly was feeling in that moment of pain. And I think it's a beautiful thing that even Jesus, in the most painful moment, had on his lips a psalm.
Yeah. And one of the things, I wrote here, because of some of these Psalms, and this is one that they speak about, some of them, you see clearly where you have this type of plea or complaint, if you will, or petition at the beginning of the psalm, and then halfway through the psalm, it turns to a praise. It goes from a plea to a praise, and you think, what happened? And you can clearly see, and I think it's between verses 21 and 22 in Psalm 22. He's still talking about save me from the mouth of the lion, from the horns, and all of a sudden, next thing he says, I will declare your names to my brothers and sisters. I will praise you. And the rest of the psalm is about the praise of him. So he's pleading, but then it's almost like he realizes who God is, and how, by this pleading, he's affirming, if he's doing this, God will answer and God will help. It's just that affirmation, to see something, that there's obviously some kind of change that happens in him from the thoughts of pleading to the thoughts of praying. Something changed in that aspect of that voice. But it was just that one in Psalm 13 is another one, in case in your reading that you see that, you see the plea and the praise going back and forth.
I do think it's important, at least for me, to hold on to the feeling through it.
Yeah.
I know frequently I want to rush my own experience from pain to praise, And I think it's important to hold on and let it be there. I mean,
Yeah.
20 verses, 21 verses of this lament of, you know, naming
Mm.
the, you know, I am a worm and less than human, scorned by men, despised by people. All who see me mock me.
Yeah.
They curl their lips.
Yep.
You know, I think
Another part of that words of Jesus, so to
right,
speak.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right, right. Certainly, certainly, and you know, let him commit himself to the Lord. Let him rescue him. Certainly
yeah,
invokes the crowd at the
yeah.
cross, but to go all the way into our own places of pain
Mm.
within the context of our faith, I think it's a very hard thing
Oh, yeah.
for modern
Mm.
Americans. We want to stay in that securely oriented place. We want to believe that
Yeah.
that's the essence of faith. And I think the psalmist calls us to understand that unless we go through those times of painful disorientation, we do not get to the surprising reorientation.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's kind of that the one that we'll end with on here, thinking about that reorientation, that new orientation of things, and just and going through this is how you're transforming, so to speak, from a season of lament to this season of praise or thanksgiving. And in this sense, the orientation, especially just looking at like 30, Psalm 30 is one that you could think it's about a personal thanksgiving. You know that we as you read these, you'll see some that are personal thanksgiving. You'll see some that are like communal thanksgiving. You'll see some about the description of a future king who's to come. You know, which literally, you know, prophesies. You see hymns of praise, thanksgiving through these in this thing. So you're going from that time of lament and getting out of that time, realizing that you're moving into a better situation now. You're moving into a time where, okay, you know who God is, and you're just thanking Him for helping you get through these situations, realizing that He's not ever been not with you, but He's helped you get through this situation by you putting your trust in Him and helping Him through these. And like that 30, we talked, I think 30, in fact, the choir sang 30 in worship last week. And this Sunday, or last Sunday, whenever you get it, Psalm 30 will be talked about in the scriptures with Job when we're talking about this, and this coming Sunday when I'm preaching. But you know, part of this talks about you just exalting it. One of the first things is, I exalt you, Lord, because you pulled me up. You didn't let my enemies celebrate over me. I cried out to you for help, and you healed me. You brought me up from the grave, brought me back to life from among those going down to the pit. And you just see that like that message of thanksgiving, that message of renewal, of refreshing, that I was here, I was down, but you brought me up out. And he just offering that thanksgiving to God for what He'd done for you.
I think that you know, to kind of draw things to a close for this week, I think the key thing as we read through the Psalms is this idea of bringing our life into a place of prayer and letting the Psalms be the words that we could speak. As we read through the Psalms, I think to ask ourselves, when would this be what I wanted to say? When would this be? And, you know, to know that they are there, to give voice to every experience in human life.
Yes, sir. Well, we really thank you all for joining us in this first group, this thing of Psalms. We'll be in Psalms for 5 weeks, just so you know. So hang in there with us, and we look forward to being with you again next week.
Thank you.